Well, welcome. It looks like we have 100 people and growing. And so we're very excited to see all of you today. And we're looking forward to getting to know people via the chat box. So please introduce yourself, your name, where you work in the chat box. And we're very excited to present about listening on social change and racial justice. And we are looking forward to having a panel and sharing a panel to center Black voices for you today. So please mute yourself when you enter the session and introduce yourself in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you that way during the session. So shall we go ahead and introduce ourselves, Keisha?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. Welcome. As Karen said, go ahead and mute yourselves if you're not speaking right now. Appreciate that. I'm so excited to see 113 of you here. My name is Dr. Keisha Clark, and I'll be one of your facilitators today. Can everyone hear me? Someone give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. I will be one of your facilitators today. I work for the County of San Diego as a staff development specialist, and I specialize in soft skills training. And I'm really passionate about diversity and inclusion. And as of late, been able to roll in some of this with my work as far as racial justice, social justice, Black Lives Matter. And one of the personal things for me at work, and hopefully, organizations that are joining may feel like this is a pertinent topic as well, is that people be heard about what's going on. A little personally, other than what I do professionally, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, originally, and I am a Hurricane Katrina survivor. And I always use the context, the lens that I look through is growing up in the segregated South. And so you'll probably figure that's where I'm coming from as I go along this journey with you. So thank you for having me be a moderator today.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. My name is Karen Harris, and I'm with Human Resources at the Knowledge Center. And I've been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for the past 20 years. The lenses that I bring to this work is that I'm Turkish American. Actually, Turkish people are Caucasians because Turkey is located right next to the Caucasus Mountains. So we are Caucasian, and I've been married to an African-American woman for close to 20 years, and we have 2 African-American sons. And another lens I'm beginning to experience in my life is the over 50 lens, and I'm beginning to get a feel for what that is like. So that's another lens I bring to the work now. And my experience with DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, is that people were willing to engage in anti-racism efforts between the 60s and the 90s. And then our society put a lid on this topic and tried to bury the issue of racism. And the term inclusion is actually a part of this shift. People in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion said, let's use the word inclusion so that nobody feels alienated. And the anti-racism work that was going on made many people, especially white people, feel uncomfortable. And so many became resistant to participating in anti-racism work. And this pressure to move away from anti-racism efforts was so pervasive that many of us went along with it. And this is how the power structure maintains power. So we have to be aware of that and the fact that we buried this issue for so many years. And I think the lid came off when George Floyd was murdered. And now it is our responsibility not to let anybody put the lid back on. And so that's why we're doing this presentation with you today to talk about racism and Black Lives Matter and how to facilitate listening sessions and courageous conversations about these topics. So let's go to the next slide. Social change, these are the basic concepts we want to share with you today. Social change and racial justice are complex and emotional issues. and we only have 1 hour. So we want to share 4 basic ideas with you today before we go into our listening session and have our panelists speak. The good thing about a listening session is it can be done within your organization with a lot of people. And when you do something virtual like this, it can be, we've done it at the county with up to 300 or 350 people. And the basic idea behind a listening session is exactly what it's called. It's to practice deep listening of others and to center marginalized voices. And we're going to be centering Black voices today, but you can center any marginalized voices when you do a listening session. So I won't speak more about that because that's what we're going to be role modeling today. The other concept, the next concept I want to share with you is courageous conversations. The difference between a listening session and a courageous conversation is that in a courageous conversation, people are actually dialoguing, and that's different than just listening to one another. So we believe that in order to dialogue about racial justice, there needs to be a foundation of trust, and there also needs to be some agreement on the facts. And people have to understand a little bit about the history of racism in this country in order to be able to have these conversations. And so that needs to be a foundation laid before the courageous conversation. And another difference between a listening session and a courageous conversation is we recommend for a courageous conversation to be successful about 10 to 15 people, maybe 20 people in the dialogue. So that is really quite different than a listening session. And these are dialogues where people commit, the people in the conversation commit to engaging with honesty, open-mindedness, and vulnerability. And they have to have the ability to sustain the conversation when it gets uncomfortable. And that's where we failed in the past, is we did not have the resilience for these dialogues. And that's why we were able to, that the power structure was able to bury the racism conversations for so long. We have to develop that resilience so that we can't hide from the fear of feeling uncomfortable. So the next concept we want to share with you today is the idea of community agreements, and you probably know them as ground rules. Whenever you're conducting a listening session or a courageous conversation, it's important to create some agreements with the participants of how the process will work. And we provided some handouts today, some resources and tools for you. We hope you download them from the site where our workshop is located. But some examples of ground rules or community agreements would be, for example, stay curious throughout the dialogue, or do not call people out in the conversation, call people in to the conversation. Or something like, this is a courageous conversation, not a debate. You know, so ground rules or agreements like that so that people know what to expect from the process. And the last concept I want to talk with you about today is the concept of a brave space. And we often talked in the past, and people still talk today about a safe space. And we need to have a safe space in order for people to have these kind of dialogues. But we really need to rethink the idea of safety, because people of color in our society are not safe. And so any learning or discussions about topics that involve a distribution of power, which is what the conversation about racial justice is all about, a distribution of power. Any conversation about a distribution of power will probably not make people feel safe, especially those who are being asked to share power. So a brave space is one where people accept that learning about and discussing racial justice involves risk, and it also involves potentially some pain. And when you have risk and pain potentially in the dialogue, that's incompatible with safety. So we have to be willing to give up the notion of creating safe spaces and trade that for the notion of creating brave spaces. So now I'm going to pass this back to Dr. Clark, who's going to talk a little bit about our listening session and introduce our panelists, and she might have a few words to say about the concepts I just introduced as well.
Thank you, Karen. Karen talked about the lid came off when George Floyd was murdered. And we didn't have time because of the hour we had, but we wanted to bring in concepts about the lid has come off several times in the past with different eras, different issues that brought it to this head to a bud, right? And we have missed opportunities each time it is taken, the lid is blown off. So this is important. I just want to say from what Karen was saying, the listening sessions, we believe, should come before courageous conversations, as Karen talked about. You have to have the wherewithal and the resilience, again, to maintain the conversation when it gets difficult, when people begin to communicate in a way that is not comfortable for you. So this might involve someone raising their voice, someone using gestures. You can see physical, or visceral reactions in people, and being able to sustain the conversation. And as leaders, I'm going to say you all are leaders, we should be able to do that. I don't believe we're that soft-skinned that we cannot endure some of that. And so before we can go back and forth with the courageous conversations, though, you have to be able to listen to things that you might not agree with, you might not feel like you can accept, but it is someone's reality. So what we're going to, again, model is we have a panel, a beautiful panel of 3 people that are going to share some things, and it may be uncomfortable things, but we're going to practice listening to those things and handling, hearing some hard to hear things. I also, before we go to that, I just want to talk about the community agreements and how many times it's developed to create a comfortable space for people that feel like they don't have the wherewithal, like I don't want to enter this war zone. And so we have to really be careful when we craft our community agreements, group agreements, ground rules, whatever you want to call it, that we are not comforting the person that is not the marginalized person, all right? And having the uncomfortable, the person that really is, as Karen talked about, unsafe in real life, feel even unsafe in these conversations or listening sessions. And so know that we are safe when we're just talking. And so that's important. And that brave space of having the courage to call people into the conversation and not take some risk. All right, so let me introduce you to our panel here. And I have their bios here. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our panel. We have Khalif Price, we have Ahmed Moomin, we have Tamara Watson Foster. Khalif is an activist and a published author. He's a theater director, a storyteller, playwright, actor, musician, and he's the owner of JGB Publishing and MJTC Theater Company. He spends his time working as a dramatic literature teacher and a JAG instructor at Innovation High School. He holds a bachelor's degree in both English, community and youth development, and he has a master's in educational leadership. So welcome, Khalif. And then we have Ahmed Moomin. He works for the County of San Diego Probation Department. He is a departmental human resources officer, and his job includes recruiting, hiring, organizational development, onboarding, compensation, benefits, training, and discipline. And when he's not working, he enjoys reading, hiking, and volunteering and exercising. So welcome to Ahmed as well. And then we have Tamara Watson Foster. She goes by TWF. She's a human services specialist at our Northeast Family Resource Center, and she determines eligibility for residents applying for federal and state aid programs. She is a former member of Bikers Against Child Abuse, and she's a current volunteer with foster youth through the Just in Time organization, serving young adults who have aged out of the foster care system. So welcome to our panel. And so I will be the moderator. So again, we're helping you understand, and maybe you can bring it to your organization, how to conduct listening sessions. So I have some questions for our panelists, and they're gonna give us answers, and I'll moderate, and so you can kind of see how that goes. So shall we begin?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start with Khalif. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it feels like to be Black in San Diego or America right now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Karen, as well, for the introduction. And just before I answer the question, how much time do I have just to respect what we're doing here?
Thank you for asking. Let me look at our time here. I think we have 5 minutes each.
Okay.
Karen? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
about right.
All right.
Okay. So, very broad question. How does it feel to be Black in America right now? Um, I guess to answer that question, I would have to start first by giving a little bit of the background as to the lens I look through and what's shaped who I am today. I come from Savannah, Georgia, in the Deep South, and I have a very large family that comes from Georgia. And our history is built off of sharecroppers in the Deep South. And if you know anything about sharecropping, you know after the Emancipation Proclamation, coming into what we believed was going to be a free society in America, my ancestors toiled away in the Deep South, tending to the land. There were certain restrictions in terms of how much land you can own and how much money you could make based upon the separate but equal law that was created there in the Jim Crow South. So my grandfather, he toiled in the land in the South, and he worked very hard to try to create something for the existence of my family. The offspring of my mother, when she came into being in the deep racist South, there was an alliance and a union amongst Black people then, because when you have very few resources, you have to work together in order to move ahead. So they sought to educate my mom, her brother, her sister, and all of the youth within the small town of Savannah, Georgia, in hopes that being educated would bring change, resources, socially, economically to our family. And they pushed that forward. But ultimately, what ended up happening was, despite the push for education, my mother going to Spelman College, graduating with a master's, going to law school, and ultimately becoming a Black Panther, racism still ensued upon my family. And it reared its vicious head in a multitude of ways. One being that my grandfather, my mother's father, he would have been the first Black master sergeant in Georgia. And it was something he was very proud of, the ability to be able to provide for his family and to pay for a mortgage and own a Cadillac and have the basic necessities of survival, keep a roof over our head. He still dealt with racism. And before he became that master sergeant, he was given a dishonorable discharge. And it destroyed who he was, because he was booted out of the military without a pension, no retirement, and this reputation of somebody that hadn't accomplished anything for himself. He was unable to provide for the family. So he became an alcoholic. And my mother, seeing her father, hero, of her life, fall prey to alcoholism, it really was disturbing and hurtful to her to see that, to see racism and the result of dealing with racism in the form of alcoholism. And it turned into domestic violence. And when she saw that, it started to break her own focus. And she started returning back home from trying to fight as a Black Panther to trying to aid the family in my grandfather's alcoholism. And ultimately, it resulted in a series of domestic violence incidences against my grandmother. And my mother was really damaged by that. Not only that, but just the shaping of racism in America that she was dealing with as a Black woman. And as a result, even as an attorney, she fell prey to crack cocaine during the crack epidemic. And I think it's really important to note how drugs played a part in order to try to anesthetize the pain that Black people have dealt with racism within this country. It's very easy to look at the war on drugs and say it's a series of poor choices that were made. But when you feel so destitute, hurt, and crippled within based upon the thumb of racism that leads towards drug addiction, it helps you to understand what's going on. All of those things led up to me being born and coming into the world where I sort of denounced myself, so to speak, as an American citizen. I didn't feel myself connected to the opportunities and the civil liberties that were afforded people within this country. And it made me turn to Africa to look towards my own Afrocentricity in order to find identity, caring, an opportunity for myself as a Black man to really grow. And I'm trying to fit a lot within 5 minutes, but ultimately what's happened is that my sense have come full circle. I've been influenced by the writings of Paul Robeson. If you know much about him, he's an amazing human being who was blacklisted in America. So you don't find a lot of his works, but if you do, you find out he was someone who was a Pan-Africanist, but also spoke about Black people's investment within this country. You know, we built this country, so to speak, literally off the backs of slave labor. So there should be no reason why we see ourselves as not being a part of a claim and stake within this country. All of that said, when it comes to the reality of living in this country, it's very difficult um, in order to actualize that. As a father of 4 children, trying to bring them up and help them to accomplish their dreams, to do so when I know that they have to deal with things like police brutality. There's a chance that they may not make it past 21. These are harsh realities that take you away from the ability to be able to dream and really foster what this country is supposed to be all about. So I think I'll stop there just to give the other panelists an opportunity to share what they have to say as well too.
Thank you, Khalif. Khalif, man, listen, this is something that everyone needs to know as far as your listening sessions. We have an hour, but these are narratives of people's lives. So just keep that in mind, and to put that into a few minutes, it doesn't do it justice, but you can see how you want to be able to offer something like this more than one time, right? And be able to assess. Thank you so much, Khalif, for that contribution. I'm gonna go ahead and ask Tamara the same question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it feels like to be Black in San Diego or America right now, Tamara.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Karen, for having me on today. It's always great to see you guys. And thank you to everyone who's listening and participating in this panel. This is something that's definitely of the utmost importance, in my opinion, in our country right now. My name is Tamara. I am Black. I've got a Black father. I'm also white. I've got a white mother. I'm also a woman. I'm also a homosexual. Oftentimes my dad will joke about me training for, oppression Olympics or identity bingo, with all these different facets of my identity and all these different lenses that I look through. So it's definitely interesting. I was born in Las Vegas in the 70s, raised in New York City, and I've been living in San Diego for the last 11 years. So I've definitely faced various forms of discrimination throughout my life, decade to decade, region to region. It's all brought something unique. At this point in time, in regard to how it feels for me to be Black in America or in San Diego, I got to tell you, it's never felt as exhausting as it does right now, here in 2020. I don't know if that's because it's been so difficult for so long. I'm not a spring chicken. And the accumulation of all those challenges have taken a toll. Maybe it's because race in America is presently a topic that's being discussed worldwide in the middle of the great communication age, where you can hear things from people that you may have never heard from before. It could very well be because we've spent hundreds of years growing this nation, and this is a nation that has yet to make good on its promise of building a society that would hold the truth that all men are created equal to be self-evident. We have not delivered on that at all. Whatever the reason, whatever the cause, I find myself absolutely bone tired as a Black person in America today.
Thank you so much, Tamara. So again, in modeling a listening session, you can come behind a speaker to summarize or put into context what they've been talking about. So with Khalif, adding history to it, generational context as well. And what Tamara just added about the fatigue, the racial battle fatigue that Blacks are feeling in America, and the accumulation of that and how that has impacted, and feeling that it is not, we haven't made good on the promises of this nation. And Khalif also talked about that in, the building of America, and not also feeling like you have to focus on your African ancestry rather than what your ancestors have contributed to where you are right now. So now I'm going to move to Ahmed Moomin and ask him the same question. Tell us a little about yourself, Ahmed, and what it feels like to be Black in San Diego or America right now. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Ahmed.
All right, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Keisha, and Karen, for giving me this opportunity. This is something that I just wanted to share my story with everyone. Honestly, I didn't know anything about racism, anything, until I got here in America, because I came here. I'm originally from Somalia in Africa. I was born and raised over there, and I came here when I was a teenager, like in 2001. And this was some, eye-opening for me. Like, honestly, I would say, didn't know racism until like maybe the past 10 years or 8 years, because when I got here, I didn't even speak English. So I didn't even know if people were being racist towards me, or they just, because they were picking on me because I didn't speak the language. So I didn't know any better, and, in Somalia, basically, you just see people in like same color as you, like, they all speak the same native language. So I felt comfortable, I go to the store by myself. But then when I got here, it was more like, eye-opening. And the first time that honestly I witnessed like a racism was in college, like, because I have an accent, and, me and my friend, we went to like TJ, and he's white. At that time I only had, like an alien card, and we were like, when you cross the border, I didn't know any better, so you just cross, and then when you're coming back is when they they check in and stuff. But my friend at that time, who's white, just said, hey, you just need your driver license and school ID, you're good. He's like, I always cross this regular, it's nothing. And for me, it was a whole different story, because I thought I was being pranked. When I was coming back, my friend was in front of me, so the guard let him pass. He just showed him, and I was trying to show him the same thing. And then the guy was like, oh, what are you trying to do? I said, oh, I'm just with my friend, I'm just trying to go back. He's like, oh, you're not going back. And it turned into this whole thing where, he started asking me like where you're from, like you have an accent. And then, for me being a Muslim, like I have a Muslim name, and also being, Black at that time, I was terrified because, I was a not citizen, I only had a green card at the time. And then, I thought he was joking. And he was like, well, he started saying, well, are you guys like the Somali pirates, and you're the one that jack in the boat? He was like asking me like, how did you got here? Like, what did I say? Well, I came here as a refugee. It's a process, I didn't come here illegally, And he was just basically saying like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna let you cross until your friend over here goes over there and pick up your documents. And I had to wait like a couple hours basically, so my friend could go to my house, pick up my, alien card, and then come back. And so from there, honestly, it's just something that now to this day, I'm still traumatized, because when I'm traveling abroad, I have to go to the airport 3 hours in advance because I already know I'm gonna get pulled over no matter what because of the name that I have, So, and at the time, people would tell me like, "Hey, why don't you just change your name? Like, you look like African American." And I say, "Hey, well, this is my identity. Like, this is who I am." And even though I have to face these challenges, I'm not gonna, change that. So it's something that is part of my life. It's something that I have to deal with. But honestly, that's how it feels now, because if I get pulled over, I get the, being black and also being, Muslim, because I get both challenges, and until now, like honestly, a lot of people didn't know what Somali was until our current president, put the light on it, like being one of the travel bans. So that was like, I have that in my mind. So I'm like terrified. I haven't even traveled for like over a year or so now, like, a couple of years now. So because of that. So it's very challenging, but it's something that honestly, maneuvering around and being part of this discussion is something that uplifts me and like, helps me out.
Thank you, Ahmed. I think what many of a lot of people share is some intersectionality. So what you heard from our speakers, they talked about different parts of their identity that is stigmatized from the name, your name, wow, why don't you change your name? But just keep in mind that when we talk about intersectionality, if you don't know what that is, it's, when you have several, dimensions of identity that stigmatized, from your gender to your sexual orientation and some of the other, your religious background, some of the other things that they shared. And so hearing these stories and being able to, if you don't walk that life, you don't walk through life that way. I always share about having cultural humility and not so much the empathy part of take a walk in someone else's shoes, because there's no way I can walk in Ahmed's shoes. I don't have his name, I'm not Muslim. So there's no way you can walk in my shoes unless you're a Hurricane Katrina survivor. And it can be offensive to assume that, you can walk in someone's shoes or know how they feel. But what you can do is be humble and hear, wow, that's the way this person walks through the world. That's the way they're experiencing things. The other thing, I see Karen really lighten up our chat. That's another tool you want to use when you're having a listening session. You want to encourage people that may not have the opportunity to vocalize, on camera or, through audio. You want to encourage them to use the chat, to begin dialogue there, to begin sharing. And many people might, again, share some experiences they've had, or they could show allyship. They can show solidarity as well, and so and support. And so, thank you all. So what we want you all to do before we get to that, but we're going to have you go on breakout rooms, and we're going to have you conduct a listening session of your own. But before we do that, I want to turn your attention to, and I don't know if you went to our documents that we uploaded. We uploaded some documents for you. So when you go to your organizations and you want to begin listening sessions, or you can go ahead and give me the next slide. Thank you, Ben. You can use those tools to help guide you. So you'll see the facilitator guide in our documents if you haven't gotten them. This is just an overview. You want to create a proposal, with your vision of your listening session, the objectives and the outcomes. And remember, the listening session comes before the courageous conversations, okay? When you are creating that proposal, you want to get a diverse group of trusted employees to plan the event with you. Because you want to be able to reach a wide array of people. And so you can only do that when you include people that have different views and thoughts than you do. And then you want to, of course, conduct a listening session. And again, we have the tools in our documents, some things you want to consider before having courageous conversations. At that point, what's really important is education. Education is key to have conversations, to equip people when they're, entering brave spaces and talking back and forth. Again, having that historical context is really, really important. So I want you to take a look at that. So I call you all leaders because I really want to impress upon you the courage it takes to have a listening session. I've done, as Karen talked about, listening sessions with the county. This is a large matrix organization, and we've had, like she said, 300 or so people on those calls. And I did 4 sessions, and people say, great job moderating, but it's a lot of emotional toil to do that, to hold space for people. One, it was hard because I'm a Black woman, so I'm holding space for Black people that want to express how they're feeling. And I'm holding space for allies and non-people of color that are feeling uncomfortable, don't know what to do, don't know what to say. And maybe it was their first time ever hearing some of these horrific stories that other people are experiencing, where for me, it's a norm. I'm used to hearing these stories from people. And so as we get you into the breakout rooms and have you begin to practice a listening session, go ahead to the next slide, Ben. I want you to keep in mind, I see Karen unmuted, she might have something to say. I just want you to keep in mind that you might be uncomfortable or feel ill-equipped, but I want to invite you to step into being maybe uncomfortable in moderating a listening session of your own. Karen, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, when you're done, I was just going to go over the instructions for the breakout session.
Oh, okay. I saw you unmute. And so, yeah, you're in luck. I know we didn't say that, and don't start to leave. I'm looking at the number of participants. Don't start going to another session, okay? But we want you to, I'm sure there's so many other narratives that are important to hear on this call. We have 139 people. And so we're gonna break out into breakout rooms and conduct the listening session. So Karen, can you give them the instruction?
Yeah, so we wanted to give you an opportunity just to practice having this in a smaller group, which is always nice, to introduce yourself to a few other people. We're going to try to have about 8 to 10 people in each breakout session. And in order to get the conversation going, we would like the person who has the last name that starts with a letter that's earliest in the alphabet. So that'll be the first thing to figure out whose last name is earliest in the alphabet. We would like to ask you to be the facilitator for this discussion. If you're not comfortable, you can pass it along to the person with the next letter in the alphabet. That's fine. But basically, we want the facilitator to get everybody to introduce themselves, the name and their organization. And then the conversation we wanted to have is what has been your perspective or experience with Black Lives Matter? And you can react to the panelists, what they said today. You can have your reactions to that, or you can share your own personal experiences. And we're going to give about 10 minutes in the breakout session just to have this dialogue and just practice listening to one another. So anything else to add to that, Keisha?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear and see you all practice the skill.
Okay, great. So we'll ask Ben to go ahead and put you all in breakout rooms, then we'll bring you back after 10 minutes.
We have someone with a raised hand. Did you have a question, Adriana?
I was asking how you're going to put us in the great
Yes.
breakout,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
good. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
See you back here in 10 minutes. Go ahead and press join when you see that on your screen.
Hi, I don't see any join.
Yeah, I don't either.
Neither. Don't see
So I
John.
believe that those of us who came in through the Live Well website don't have the Zoom link. Hi, Yanni. And
Hi.
so we're not in a Zoom platform right now.
Oh,
You can actually go
Yeah.
to the Zoom platform by clicking on your
Oh,
unmute yourself and go to if you're having problems with or click on the link experience issues, click here for additional live stream options and that will take you to the Zoom.
Okay.
thank you.
Oh,
Okay. It's down below the black box. Hmm.
Overall, we have had
hi.
96
I'm
over,
uh,
but error
sorry,
message.
I'm getting
So
a
I
lot
don't.
of
Oh,
my sound is off. Like I'm getting a lot of background noise for some reason. I don't know why. But hi, I'm oh, do I? Well, I'm a student with a master's of public health student at Cal State University San Marcos. Happy to be here.
It's not working for me.
I'm not able to get on either.
Have more, education on this.
So, I can go next.
Okay.
My name is Lori, and I work at Lady Children's Hospital in the Center for Health and Community. I come from Chicago. If you're familiar with Chicago, we have a lot of racial violence from our police towards African American citizens. One of the things that really blew the lid off of it in Chicago was horrid. But I also have an African American daughter whose room I'm sitting in right now. She's 8 years old and she's very tall and looks like she's 13. So we worry about her all of the time. Who knows what someone would say. We participated in the Black Lives Matter protests here in I live in San Diego now, so in San Diego, and it was one of the best experiences for her and for us, but for her to see other people protesting and saying that Black Lives Matter. I won't say all the things they said because they were very easy to repeat. She loved them. But for me, it's always been an issue. I'm also a lesbian, so we live in that fear that someone might have been harassed on the street before. So it's like it's the intersectionality that Keisha talked about that we live with every day. And so in our house, Black Lives Matter more than anything else, we focus on that. As long as Black race, if we can get past racism with African Americans, which is a huge, huge undertaking based on history, as you talked about, Colleen. I think once we can do that, then everything else will fall into place. But we have a big old wound there that we have to figure out how to heal.
I'll go. I'm unmuted actually. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm also with the Center for Healthier Communities at Rady Children's Hospital. And well, first of all, thank you everyone. Thank you Ahmed and Khalid for everything you've shared on this type of conversation. It's something that brings about a lot of emotion. And I'm someone that's very emotional, so and passionate. I'm a bicultural, bilingual Latina, originally from the Bay Area, born in San Francisco. And I think 2020, in another session, it was said it's been a catalyst of awakening. And I really agree with that. I mean, the racial reckoning that we've been going through, it's been for years. And I feel like I'm at a point with so much, again, emotions, and enough is enough. And I think being a part of these type of things for me is why I'm here, where I can learn and figure out how my voice can also help being an ally, or, you know, as a Latina as well. So yeah, I'm just here with open arms and eager and hungry to continue strengthening this movement. Yeah.
I'll go next. Can you hear me? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Well, my name is Agnes Conrad, and I live in City Heights area of San Diego, and I'm in my 80s now, and I work with a grassroots organization called City Heights Village San Diego, and it's not a place, it's a group where people who are aging get together, and we try to grow older in a better way, to have purpose in our lives, to learn about the world, and to keep as active as we can as we age. And through the years, as I look at my own life, I feel like it's been sort of like an evolution from different levels of awareness of racism. Now, I grew up in a place where there was so much diversity. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and my grandparents came from different places. My grandparents on my mother's side came from Portugal on a boat. They were contracted, sort of like indentured people. They signed a contract with the United States government to come and work on the sugarcane plantations. And my grandfather on my father's side came from Korea, and he came the same way. So I grew up in a very diverse community, but believe it or not, I realized as I grew up that there was racism there as well. And one thing I became aware of while I went to school with lots of Asian people and brown people, there were not very many Hispanic people during the 40s and 50s when I was growing up. And there weren't a lot of Black people in Hawaii. So when I came to San Diego as a married woman in my early 20s, it was a kind of a cultural shock when I noticed that the Black people all lived in one area, Logan Heights at the time. This was in the 50s. And I also noticed that the Black people, a lot of them
worked in certain kinds of jobs. And but I think I realize now that I had more of a kind of a paternalistic attitude, like I didn't have a negative attitude. I didn't have a real attitude. I wasn't looking to listen and find out more about, why they were having to live that way. But through the years and with raising my children, we learn a lot from our children. My children are very socially active. And so I learned a lot from them. And I'm aware of Black Lives Matter. I've not gone to any of the protests, but I have been supportive of them. And I have to tell the truth that when I first heard Black Lives Matter, I was one of those people that said all lives matter. But it took me a while to realize what was meant, and I accept it and support it. So that's what I wanted to tell you.
Well, I'll go ahead quickly. So I'm Cheryl Dine. I grew up in Ohio, in Parma, Ohio, which was a very white area, very Polish, Italian. And I think when I was first growing up, I didn't really think that much about racism, because I think sometimes when you're in that more closed environment, you're not experiencing it. But I will say that I grew up in a very progressive public school system. So we learned about a lot of different things, but I became more aware, and especially as I got older and moved into different neighborhoods in California, it's been wonderful to expand my vision and inclusivity. I felt like when I was younger, I paid more attention to a lot of the things, and then even for women equality, and when for a while during work, wasn't paying that much attention. So it's been really great to see, especially the young people and the women stepping up and forcing change, and for the Black Lives Matter movement. I've been trying to learn more about it, be more involved. I did do one march, and I'm trying to do more reading and attend things like this so that I know how to help move everything forward. And I have to say, Andrea, I really like your passion. So
sorry
anyway,
to interrupt you guys. Ben, are you there? Ben, can you bring everybody back? Yes, please bring everybody back from the session so we can have 5 minutes to wrap up.
We have one final speaker. Anybody want to final one? We have about 60 seconds.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, guys.
I'd be happy to take that last slot. I just completed a 1-hour training for faith centers on racial equity. And in the process, I had to meet with a lot of people from a lot of different groups. And I was forever having to tone it down and take things out and what have you in order to meet. I'm talking about faith centers, so it's very broad.
I'm sorry, Mary. This is one of the hosts. I went ahead and muted. Something must have went wrong. We're coming back to the larger group, and I don't know if this was used as a breakout room, this main area. So I apologize, Mary. I cut you off right in the middle of what you were saying.
So do you think we have everybody back?
We have 105 people back. Ben,
okay.
We should have everyone back. The people who were not logged directly into the Zoom could not go into a breakout room,
right.
So they used the lobby as a breakout room.
Okay,
I see.
We should all be back now.
Yeah, we heard some kind of difficulty in that. Sorry about that, you all. We weren't aware of that situation, whether you're in the platform or whether you're in the Zoom. But thank you so much for participating. So I just, we have just 4 minutes to wrap up, Karen. And I just want to know, you know, how that was for you all. Maybe we can have 1 or 2 people share, like
And
a
put it,
minute,
I would encourage,
or
put it in
so.
the chat too.
Oh,
Any
yeah,
thoughts?
yeah.
Yeah, thoughts about the listening session, either from the panel or from what it was like in the breakout. Would love to hear your thoughts. And also want to know if you have any questions about how to facilitate listening sessions. Dr. Clark is an expert in this area and has a lot of great experience. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat or unmute yourself and we'll take a couple of questions before we get cut off.
Definitely, I see more time. People are saying they could have spent a lot of time, and it was really hard to really demonstrate a real listening session with a short amount of time, but hopefully you got the concept of what you would do as you go through a journey and summarize and things like that. I just want to give a takeaway from our session that we had, and I'm borrowing this from the National Conflict Resolution Center earlier with their bystander challenge, that when we're talking about racial justice, Black Lives Matter and things like that, I think it was something to the effect of, if you're not, you know, if you didn't have to be uncomfortable or exchange your privilege, share your privilege or give your privilege away or something like that, then you might want to kind of reevaluate, I guess, where you are as far as being an ally. And so I was happy to hear all kinds of different values, and hopefully we didn't go back and forth in our breakout rooms, that we were able to say how we felt. And we had some differing thoughts in our breakout room, and it's being able to handle a thought that I might not disagree, I might not agree with that. I might not be able to accept that that person feels that way, but I'm able to listen and continue. Anybody else?
I would just like to point out that we recommend at least an hour for a listening session. We did a little snippet, a mini model of 20 minutes, but we recommend at least an hour. 90 minutes, probably even better. And as Dr. Clark said, when you do a listening session, you're probably going to want to do, especially if you have a larger organization, do it a few times. So people get a chance to participate and engage and have real conversations.
This chat is looking good. You know, Afra talks about, you know, the shock of, you know, organizations hiring more Blacks after the Black Lives Matter, the TV station commercials, movies. Adriana, that we need to keep bringing it up because it's real. So yes, use your chat, continue to, you know, reflect those ideals of the group, you know, to the larger group here.
I just want to speak to allies for a moment in my closing. I want to say for myself that being an ally means that I have to use my privilege to uplift people who have been marginalized. And that means I need to create space for people. And in order to do that, often I have to decenter myself in order to create that space. And it also means I need to highlight the work of people, highlight the talent, provide a platform for people to shine. And also I need to challenge people who have power to be able to do the same, or have privilege to be able to do the same. And so allies play a key role. Like I said earlier, we are part of the power structure that put a lid on the topic of anti-racism work. And we need to make sure that lid does not go back on. And anybody who has any power or privilege can contribute to making sure that we don't put a lid back on discussions of racism, because for too long, we were willing to say, yeah, that's hard for people. So let's not go into it right now, you know, maybe later, let's lay the foundation first and we'll do this later. But, you know, we can't wait. People can't wait. People's lives are at risk. This is not something that we can just wait till people are comfortable to discuss. It's happening now, and we need to keep doing it and build our resilience to be able to be successful at doing this. Keisha, any final thoughts?
No, I just love, well, yeah. Okay, Catherine, I'm surprised they didn't kick us out. They might kick us out in a minute. But Catherine Shade also said something from the National Conflict Resolution Center about, you know, just being the person that is there to give compassion. Karen used her privilege. We happen to work together. She's my supervisor, and she's used a lot of privilege too, like she said, shine light on, uplift, push through doors, you know, take risks and things like that. So I'm here to also share compassion in people that want to know more, want to get in on their sharing privilege, giving away their privilege, or, you know, risking things, putting something at risk, losing their privilege. I'm here to share the load. I don't want to do it alone, and I don't want to give you my power to do it for me. I want to do it together.
And I see a comment in the chat about Native Americans, and I just want to say that these listening sessions and courageous conversations can be and should be used to center any marginalized voice. So providing that opportunity for all different groups to share their voices is so important. We focused on Black voices today, but it can be any group. So go to the resources and the handouts, download the materials, let us know, email if you have any questions. We hope you're able to do this in your organization or in your school or in your church. And let's keep up the struggle, keep up the fight for justice. Takes everybody.
Where are the resources?
If you go to our workshop on the Live Well Advance platform and you scroll down, you click on the title of the workshop and then you scroll down below our names, you'll see at the very bottom, there's the handouts. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all
very
so much.
Thank you. This one was great. Thanks.
And if you have any questions with the time, if they let us keep this room, we're happy to answer your questions. Sure.
Will you do this again?
Yes, we will. We will everywhere we can. It's important to be that squeaky wheel, even though it's uncomfortable to keep speaking up and doing this and this again, another racial justice. Yeah, we're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna keep talking about it.
Okay, are you going to still do the listening sessions that you were that you started a while ago?
At the county?
Yes.
We haven't talked about any in the short term right now, but it was talked about that we need to have more of those. We heard you all that we need to have more of those. So I'm sure we will have some in the future.
Thank you.
Catalina asked, what is the difference between listening sessions and courageous conversations? And so if you're still on the line, Catalina, I'll just give you the quick version of that. So the listening session is simply for that, for listening, for centering marginalized voices. And it can be done with very large groups, especially in a virtual platform like this, where people can listen to one another and share their narrative, share their voice, share their experience. Courageous conversation is an actual dialogue between people. And we believe that in order to have a dialogue, you need to have a foundation built upon some sort of shared understanding of history or shared understanding of people's experiences in order to have a genuine dialogue. So you have to lay the foundation first. There needs to be some trust and a smaller group for a courageous conversation, somewhere between 15 to 20 people at the most, to have that kind of dialogue about racial justice. So both are about learning and discussing or hearing about racial justice, but they're different formats, and they can kind of go one after the other, with the listening session first or some anti-racism training first, and then courageous conversations to follow that. So we got a 30-second warning. We're being kicked out. Thank you, everybody.
Keisha, I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you shared.
You're welcome, Thelma. Thank you for joining.
I had a question, Keisha. Real quick question.
Yes, Alfredo.
So have you done these the online with I'm hearing echo, I don't know why.
Yes, we've done it online. Mm-hmm.
And do you feel that it's safer for people
Yeah, I think it can
being
add
online?
It can add some safety. Yeah, it can.
Okay. Great talk. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Alfredo. Also,
joining,
want to
Alfredo.
thank our panelists for being and sharing their story too. So
Yes.
thank you to our panelists, Ahmed and Khalif and Tamara. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks for
thank you
having
for
us.
having me. Yep, thanks for having us. It was a good experience, so thank you.
Yay.
All right,
Good
take
job.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ahmed.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Nice to see you too, Karen. Bye.
All right, you all stay safe out there.
All right.
Bye, Tamara.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Any other questions? They say 30 seconds, but if they don't kick me out, I tell you, I can talk about this stuff all day, you all, okay? I'm
Yeah,
interested in Mary.
free.
Mary was talking about a training she had attended, and it sounded very interesting what she was sharing. She's on mute though. Hi, Sarah. I see Miss Zaire. Well, if you all don't have anything else to add or ask, we can get off of here. I don't want to hold you.
Yep. All right. Dr. Clark, nice seeing you.
You too, Miss Harris.